Realistically, I probably should have played the GameCube version of this game because it supposedly has more content than the PS2 version, or maybe that was for Burnout 2. Whatever. So in the early to mid 90s, Criterion, a gaming company owned by Canon of all things, created what we now know as the Renderware engine. Renderware was probably the most ubiquitous game engine of the 6th console generation, responsible for such classics such as Persona 3 and 4, the Grand Theft Auto games of 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, and the topic of today's video, the original Burnout. Burnout 1 released in 2001 on the PlayStation 2, and it released in 2002 for the Xbox and GameCube. This game was more or less a showcase of what the Renderware engine was capable of, although the devs also just wanted to create an old-school arcade racer. Given what the franchise would go on to become, the first game is a relatively humble start for the series. Unfortunately, this game is also horribly outdated, and if you want to play Burnout 1, you're honestly better off playing Burnout 2, as it's basically Burnout 1 but way better. So why the hell am I talking about it? I thought it'd be funny. Like with the second game, this video is going to be more of a first impression since I've played only 3 hours of it. Though that's not saying much with a game that's roughly 4 hours long. The main question I'm going to try to answer with this video is Burnout 1 good? Okay, here we go. At its core, Burnout 1 is a very simple game. You've got championship, single race, time attack, and then the special menu. The special menu just hides away the survival and face-off modes. The championship mode consists of 6 Grand Prix, most of which are 3 races long, although there seem to be 2 marathon races which are only 1 race long. Completing the Grand Prix allows you to unlock face-off races, which you need to do if you want to unlock the game's extra cars, as well as being able to unlock the survival mode. Completing Grand Prix also unlocks access to more courses in the single race mode. On the topic of the game's car roster, you start off with access to about 5 of them, and it seems like there are 4 more that get unlocked in the face-offs. So the total car roster is about 9. Each car in the game is given a difficulty of easy, medium, or hard, which I presume relates to the car's handling. Feels a little superfluous though, given that I had more trouble using the medium difficulty cars than I did using the game's muscle car, which is categorized as hard. Let's talk about the game's handling model. The cars are generally pretty responsive, but the handling in this game feels extremely twitchy compared to the rest of the franchise. It doesn't really matter which car I drive, any micro adjustments I make just lead to the car fishtailing a bit, which is the last thing I want when traffic in this game is so punishing. The traffic here feels about as dense as it gets in Revenge, but this game doesn't have traffic checking, which means there are a lot of obstacles that you need to avoid. And the handling model of this game isn't exactly the most suitable for trying to dodge traffic. I mean, you still can, but it's extremely difficult. Chances are you're just going to crash, which crashes are the main selling point of Burnout, yeah, but holy shit, the crash sensitivity in this game is stupid. The lightest tap at any angle at any speed is liable to be counted as a crash, meaning that you lose control for about 5 seconds. And not only are the crashes stupid, but they're also wildly inconsistent. Sometimes a light tap will get you killed. Other times, it doesn't! This can also happen with walls and certain dividers, by the way. Trying to weave between tight gaps in the traffic is honestly a bit of a nightmare in this game, but you're still probably going to have to do it because of the boost meter. As with the rest of the series, boost is earned by doing dangerous driving, i.e. near missing, driving in the oncoming lane, and drifting. You can't use any NOS until the tank is full, but once it is, unlike in Burnout 2, letting go of the boost button won't actually stop you from being able to use it, at least for a period of time. There is still a point in time in which the NOS will just stop being usable, but you can stop using it for a bit, and then resume using it if you need to slow down for a moment to avoid traffic. I'm pretty sure the rules for getting a Burnout are the same though, as in you need to use the entire tank without letting go. Burnouts don't give you a full tank in this game compared to Burnout 2, which let you chain burnouts back to back, but getting most of your tank back is still pretty useful. Of course, there's a massive elephant in the room. All of this is assuming that you survive long enough to get a full boost tank, which you probably won't. Maxing out the boost gauge here is slow bro levels of slow. The thresholds that allow you to actually get boost in this game are extremely strict, and it just takes more actions in general to actually fill up the gauge. Like, you need to be a few centimeters off in order to get a near miss, and when it comes to drifting and being in the oncoming lane, you need to go like 80 to 100 meters before it starts actually generating any boost. Oh, that's right, the game's drifting. Drifting sucks ass. There's a bit of a delay when it comes to the car actually getting the angle you need in order to hold a drift, and it doesn't feel like the car slides that much. The game's telling me that I'm drifting, but it sure as shit doesn't feel like it. And when you do get to the point where it actually feels like you're drifting, it's like Watch Dogs 1 levels of drifting. So the car is going extremely wide, which is a problem because if you're drifting sideways and then you come into contact with a vehicle, it's probably going to register as a crash. And hey, I like the drifting in Watch Dogs 1, but Watch Dogs 1 drifting isn't as punishing as this. The reason that ending up in a crash in this game is so punishing is, once again, because you lose a good chunk of your boost meter once you end up crashing. And because it takes way longer to build it up here compared to every other game in the franchise, that means most of the time during races, you're effectively going to have no boost at all, unless you manage to survive for about a consecutive minute. And the moment you do make a mistake, the AI rubber banding is going to kick in, and it's honestly at its worst in the first game. Even if you're doing a near flawless race, the AI is going to catch up somehow. I've seen it happen. Good luck trying to keep up when you can't get a decent boost going, dumbass. Even ignoring the AI rubber banding, going for dangerous driving to try to fill up the boost meter doesn't feel like it's worth it, since it's just more likely that you're going to crash. And crashes are also just terribly punishing because of the countdown timer, which is even worse here than it is in Burnout 2. In Burnout 2, the timer maxes out at 99 seconds. In Burnout 1, it maxes out at 60. And the amount of time that you get from checkpoint to checkpoint varies between being 15 seconds at worst or 45 seconds at best. If you get a refill that only leaves you with about 20 seconds at best, or you end up tapping walls at some point and losing most of your speed, you're probably going to time out and lose. And getting 2 or more crashes prior to a checkpoint is basically a death sentence. At a certain point while playing this game, I stopped trying to do dangerous driving acts consistently because I just knew it was self-sabotage. Even then, that didn't stop me from getting fucked over by all of the game's blind corners, which there are a lot of. I feel like in the other Burnout games, even in Burnout 2, which occasionally has its own blind corners, most of the crashes come from the player's errors. But with Burnout 1, I feel like a lot of my crashes were caused by intentional bullshit that gave me zero time to react. Whether that was blind corners, the absurd traffic density, or cars coming in from the sides on relatively narrow paths. I know I've spent a lot more time on the game's actual driving compared to most of the modes, but this has been the most frustrating experience I've had in any of the Burnout games. Although that being said, it's also been the one with the most tension, oddly enough. Although that was mostly because I was worried the game was going to try to fuck me over. Anyway, I've talked about the other Burnout games, mainly 2 and 3, having an arcadey feel to them, but I feel like the first Burnout game was the most blatant. The reason I say this is because the Grand Prix here actually have a credit system. Basically, the idea here is that each of the races will require you to qualify above a certain position, and if you don't reach that qualifying position or you time out before you finish the race, you have to expend a credit just to keep going. If you run out of credits, you have to start over from the beginning. Now that I think of it, it's basically the same progression system as Ridge Racer Type 4, although a lot more condensed and with shittier handling. I wouldn't say this credit system matters as much for the 1 or 2 races where there's only one event in the Grand Prix, although that does also highlight another problem with this game, which is that the races are too damn long. Honestly, Burnout 2 has the same issue to a degree, though less with the actual races and more so with the Grand Prix themselves, given that there are a few that have 5 to 6 races in them. Anyway, I digress. Let's run through the other modes real quick. Single race is basically unchanged. You pick a car, and then you pick a track, and then you race. Time attack is the same as single race, but there are no opponents. Survival is like time attack, but if you crash, the race ends. And face-off is a 1v1, where if you win, you get the opponent's car. Surprise, surprise, I still find face-offs really fucking annoying, especially with rubber banding this egregious. However, it is not the worst mode in this game because survival is boring as hell. A time attack event where you're not allowed to crash in the game series that's all about crashes doesn't read to me as fun. Not that the presentation of the crashes or the game itself is doing any favors. Now, it is commendable that Burnout has damage models for the cars, given that most racing games don't really like damaging their vehicles, but it is really light compared to the rest of the franchise. At most, you get a bit of bending for the front bumper and also the windows getting cracked. Most of the crashes also just have the car skidding a bit or maybe spinning out. There are a few instances where the cars will flip or roll over, but they are few and far between. A majority of the time, the cars just land on their feet like a bunch of pussies. The sound design isn't helping much either. It feels pretty compressed and isn't that kinetic. On the topic of sound, this game's OST is... well, it's fine, I guess. It's not better than the second game's OST, but it's serviceable enough. Although the fade when the song needs to loop again is very obvious. The game also tries to be a bit dynamic with the music by having a second track play after you've crashed like 4 or so times. Honestly, it's a little bit jarring when it happens, and I'm not the biggest fan of all of the constant crash tracks. They feel more like action scene or chase tracks, which is weird because we don't have any sort of pursuit mode in this game. Another aspect of the game that I honestly find a bit underwhelming is how this game portrays the boost. All that happens here is that you get a light blur effect and also this distracting heartbeat sound, which I wish wasn't there. I like the slight red gradient over the boost meter once you have the full meter though. That looks nice. I'd also say that the game's car models are fine, but nothing special. Most of them go on to look way better once we get to Burnout 2. The cars also have a bit more color variation here than in Burnout 3, although most of the cars showed between colors are about the same, as it's usually a mix of red, blue, white, silver, and black, with the occasional choice of yellow on certain cars replacing black. I think the nicest looking parts of this game are the tracks themselves. They seem to mostly take inspiration from either Europe or parts of the US. Each of the courses also has a nighttime variant, which also looks pretty good for the time. Something that's funny about this game is that Burnout 1 is the only game that lets you save replays. Although, it doesn't let you save replays of the actual races. Instead, what it does is that it lets you save replays of the crashes. Something that you might have noticed in the game's footage is that the game assigns fines to each of the crashes. Now, to my knowledge, the size of each fine depends on the vehicle that you've crashed into and how many vehicles are in the crash. And at the end of a race event, you'll see that the game has kept track of all of the crashes as well as their fines. You can view replays of the crashes and play them in forward or reverse at full speed, half speed, or quarter speed. I don't know why this feature was taken out in the later games, but I do find it funny that the only Burnout game that lets you save replays of any kind is the first game. And the only replays that let you save are your mistakes. Oh, and before I forget, so people don't claim that I missed this in the comments, the main menu UI is whatever. I know I've been pretty harsh towards this game over the course of this video, and I know it looks extremely unfair. Let me be perfectly clear. I don't hate this game. I don't think it's aged that well, but I don't hate it. Driving extremely fast and narrowly escaping traffic by the skin of your teeth is still extremely fun. It's just that the controls and the general design of this game make it kind of infuriating compared to every other game of the franchise. It's also just a victim of its own success given the jump in quality that the franchise would have within the span of just 4 years. It's like the glow up between Forza Motorsport 1 and 2. The second game is just far better than the first, so there's no point in playing the first one. Well, outside of novelty, I guess, which is the reason I played Burnout 1 in the first place. So is Burnout 1 a good game? I mean, technically no, but it's also not belligerent. It's a short, simple racer that is okay at best, but I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're patient and have an extreme tolerance for bullshit. 6 out of 10, can't exactly recommend. Thank you and have a good day.